You're cruising through a corner at 45 miles per hour, committed to the lean, when a car door swings open right in your path. Your brain screams, "Brake!" But every instinct you have is about to kill you. That clean panic stop you practiced in the parking lot last summer is completely useless. You are leaned over, the road is not perfectly flat, and your body just dumped a gallon of adrenaline into your system. 99% of riders in this exact moment will do one of two things. They will grab a fistful of front brake, lock the wheel, and lowside into the pavement, or they will freeze completely and plow straight into that door at full speed. The 1% who survive this scenario have one skill, the rest do not. It is not faster reflexes. It is not a better bike. It is threshold brake modulation under real-world chaos, and most riders have never trained it once. I am breaking down exactly what that skill is, why your current practice is setting you up to fail, and how to build this ability before you need it. Let us talk about the emergency braking drill most riders practice. You roll into an empty parking lot on a Sunday morning. The pavement is perfect. There is no traffic. You can see 100 yards in every direction. You are mentally prepared to stop. You accelerate to 30 miles per hour in a straight line, squeeze the brakes progressively, and come to a controlled stop. You do this 5 times, feel pretty good about yourself, and ride home thinking you are prepared for an emergency. The problem is, real emergencies look nothing like that drill. Real emergencies happen mid-corner when you are already leaned over and committed to a line. They happen on uneven pavement with gravel in the turn. They happen when a car pulls out and your brain goes into full panic mode before you even touch the brakes. Your body's fight or flight response doesn't care about parking lot muscle memory. When genuine fear hits, your conscious brain shuts down and your hands do whatever pattern they have done the most times before. For most riders, that pattern is either grabbing too hard or freezing completely. Here is the math that matters. At 40 miles per hour, you are traveling 59 feet every single second. A half-second freeze while your brain processes the threat costs you 30 feet of stopping distance. That is the difference between stopping in time and hitting the obstacle at 25 miles per hour. Stopping distance is what kills you in real situations. Parking lot drills teach you to stop when you're ready. Real life demands you stop when physics says you are already screwed. The worst part is most riders practice with heavy rear brake bias because the front brake feels scary. They will drag the rear until it is smoking while barely touching the front lever. That approach guarantees failure when it matters because the rear brake contributes almost nothing to actual stopping power under hard braking. When you brake hard, weight transfers forward and loads the front tire. That is where 70 to 90% of your stopping power comes from. The rear tire gets so light it can barely grip the road. Riders who have trained themselves to rely on the rear brake are setting themselves up to plow straight into whatever they are trying to avoid. So what separates the 1% who walk away from the 99% who do not? It is not reflexes or reaction time. It is trained threshold control. The ability to find maximum braking force instantly without locking the wheel, even when your brain is screaming and your vision is tunneling. That skill requires a completely different kind of practice than the parking lot drill you've been doing. Under hard braking, weight transfer is everything. The moment you squeeze that front lever, your bike's mass shifts forward and loads the front tire with 70 to 90% of your total stopping power. The rear tire goes light. It's contributing almost nothing to your ability to stop. Your front tire has a traction limit. It is a fixed amount of grip based on the rubber compound, the road surface, the temperature, and about a dozen other variables. Push past that limit and the tire breaks loose. You lowside instantly. Stay too far below that limit and you cannot stop in time. you hit the obstacle at speed. That narrow window between not enough brake pressure and too much brake pressure is called the threshold. Finding it instantly and holding it there is the skill that saves your life. That is what separates the 1% from the 99%. The problem is, the threshold is not a fixed number you can memorize. It changes constantly based on road surface conditions. It changes based on your tire temperature and how worn your brake pads are. It changes based on your suspension setup and how much you weigh. Most critically, it changes based on your lean angle. When riders panic, they do one of two things. They grab the lever too hard and lock the front wheel, which leads to an instant crash. Or they squeeze too soft because they are terrified of locking it, and they run out of stopping distance. They fixate on the obstacle and plow straight into it at 30 miles per hour. ABS helps by preventing the lockup. The system pulses the brake pressure when it detects the wheel is about to stop rotating. But ABS cannot teach you to find the threshold faster. It cannot teach you to modulate through a corner or read changing road surfaces. It is a safety net, not a substitute for skill. Here is what happens in a real scenario. You see the threat. Your body instantly tenses. Your shoulders lock. Your vision narrows to a tunnel focused only on the thing you are about to hit. Your fine motor control disappears because your sympathetic nervous system has taken over. In that state, your hands will do whatever they have been trained to do through repetition. If you have never practiced finding the threshold under stress, your hands will either freeze or grab. Both options end badly. The only way to override panic is to train your hands to find maximum braking force without conscious thought. You need to practice it so many times that threshold modulation becomes the default pattern your body goes to when the threat appears. That training requires a completely different approach than the parking lot drill you have been doing. You cannot practice emergency braking in a calm, controlled environment and expect it to work when your amygdala hijacks your prefrontal cortex. You need to train under conditions that simulate the chaos of a real emergency. Random visual cues, varying speeds, obstacles you did not expect, surface transitions that change available grip mid-stop. That is the practice that rewires your brain. Forget the clean, predictable stops you have been practicing. You need to train aggressive braking from unexpected visual cues at varying speeds. That is what builds the pattern your brain will default to under stress. Here is the drill that actually works. You need a safe, empty road with good visibility, not a parking lot, a real road where you can get up to street pace. Have a friend follow you on their bike or in a car. Their job is to signal you randomly to initiate maximum braking. No countdown, no warning, just a sudden visual cue that forces your brain out of cruise mode. Your goal is to go from relaxed cruising to threshold braking in under half a second. You're feeling for the exact point where the front tire is loaded to maximum grip but is not broken loose yet. That is the threshold. You need to find it instantly without thinking about it. On bikes without ABS, you are listening for feedback through the handlebars. There is a slight judder or vibration that happens right before the tire slides. That is your warning. Learn to feel it and back off just enough to stay at the edge without crossing over. On bikes with ABS, you are learning to reach the intervention point smoothly. You want the system to activate without jarring you off your line or upsetting the bike's stability. The goal is to squeeze progressively until you feel the ABS pulse, then hold that pressure. The key is repetition under stress. Your brain needs to associate the "oh shit" moment with progressive squeeze to threshold instead of a death grip on the lever. That rewiring only happens through hundreds of repetitions where the stop is not planned or predictable. Next level drill. Practice threshold braking while approaching a corner. This is where most riders die because they panic and grab the brakes while still leaned over. The tires do not have enough traction to handle both cornering forces and maximum braking at the same time. The real skill is recognizing the threat early enough to stand the bike up before applying maximum force. You need to train your body to straighten the bike first, then hit the threshold. That sequence has to become automatic because you will not have time to think about it when a car pulls out mid-corner. Here is the reality most riders ignore. You cannot brake hard while leaned over without exceeding available traction. The physics do not work in your favor. The tire's contact patch is already handling cornering loads. Add hard braking and it breaks loose. You lowside instantly. So the emergency skill is not just threshold braking. It is recognizing the threat, making the split-second decision to straighten the bike or take the corner wider, then applying maximum braking force once you are upright. That is a complex chain of actions that has to happen in less than a second. A common mistake that guarantees a crash is riders try to brake and swerve at the same time. They see the obstacle, grab the brakes while cranked over, and the front tire loses grip mid-turn. They are on the ground before they understand what happened. The drill that makes this click for most people is setting up cones in a gentle curve. Approach at 30 miles per hour in the curve. Then brake to a complete stop before the exit without touching a cone or sliding the tire. This forces you to feel the transition from lean to upright, the weight transfer loading the front, and the maximum braking force available at that moment. You will mess it up the first 20 times. You will either brake too early and stop way before the cones, or you will wait too long and plow through them. That is the point. You are training your brain to judge distance, lean angle, and available grip all at once under pressure. Run this drill 50 times, and your hands will start finding the threshold without conscious thought. That is when the skill becomes useful in a real emergency. But even with perfect technique, there is one variable that determines whether you stop or slide. Threshold braking only works if you can adjust for changing traction in real time. That perfect threshold you found on clean, dry asphalt disappears the second you hit a patch of wet leaves, loose gravel, painted crosswalk lines, or an oil spot. Some car leaked yesterday. Your eyes need to scan ahead for surface changes while your hands modulate brake pressure to match whatever grip is available right now. Most riders cannot do this because under stress, they fixate on the obstacle instead of reading the path around it or the surface beneath their tires. Here is what happens in the real world. You're braking hard on dry pavement, committed to maximum threshold pressure. Then you hit a patch of sand or gravel mid-stop. If you do not release pressure instantly, the front tire breaks loose and you are sliding before your brain registers what happened. The skill is learning to feel grip loss through the handlebars before it becomes a slide. There is a split second where the tire starts to let go, but is not fully broken loose yet. You need to back off just enough to regain traction, then reapply pressure once you are back on good surface. This is where ABS becomes a crutch instead of a tool. The system prevents the slide by pulsing brake pressure automatically. That is great for keeping you upright, but it does not teach you to read the surface or anticipate grip changes before they happen. Riders who rely only on ABS never develop the sensitivity to feel when they are at 90% of threshold versus 100%. They just squeeze until the system kicks in and hope for the best. That works fine on consistent surfaces. It fails completely when grip changes mid-stop and you need to modulate before the ABS even detects a problem. That sensitivity is what allows the 1% to brake harder, earlier, and more confidently than riders who just squeeze and hope. They are reading the road surface 3 seconds ahead. They are adjusting brake pressure before they hit the bad surface, not after the tire starts sliding. Practice drill for this skill. Find a safe, empty road with varying surfaces. You want sections of dry pavement, damp pavement, gravel shoulder, painted lines, anything that changes available traction. Practice threshold stops that cross these transitions. Your goal is to modulate brake pressure smoothly as grip changes. You are never fully releasing the brakes. You are never locking up. You are riding the threshold down as traction decreases, then pushing back up to maximum as it improves. The first 50 times you try this, you will either brake too soft and waste stopping distance, or you will brake too hard and feel the tire start to slide on the bad surface. That feedback is exactly what you need. Your hands are learning to feel the difference between 95% grip and 80% grip through the lever. The mental shift that makes this work is stopping yourself from thinking brake hard and starting to think brake to the limit of available traction right now. That is not a fixed number. It is a constantly changing variable you are adjusting for every tenth of a second during the stop. Once your brain rewires to think this way, emergency stops become less about panic and more about reading conditions and modulating pressure. You are in control instead of just reacting. So you've trained the skill. You understand the physics. You can read surfaces and modulate pressure. Now let's talk about the one thing that ruins everything when it actually matters. You can drill threshold braking for hours in a controlled environment. You can practice surface transitions until your hands know exactly how much pressure to use on gravel versus asphalt. But the first time a real threat appears, your amygdala hijacks your prefrontal cortex and everything changes. That's the science behind panic. Your brain's survival mode overrides conscious thought and dumps adrenaline into your system. Your fine motor control disappears. Your vision tunnels to a narrow focus on the threat. Your hands do whatever they did the last 10,000 times you touched the brakes in normal riding. This is why casual riders who never practice emergency stops will grab a fistful of lever and crash. It's the only pattern their brain knows under stress. Their parking lot practice taught them to squeeze gently and progressively when they're calm and ready. But panic does not care about gentle and progressive. The fix is repetition under simulated stress. You need to practice threshold braking so many times that it becomes the default pattern your hands go to when the threat appears. Not the gentle squeeze, not the death grip, the smooth, progressive squeeze to threshold that you've trained hundreds of times. Random visual cues force your brain out of cruise mode. Varying speeds prevent you from memorizing a specific brake pressure. Obstacles you did not expect trigger the same stress response you will feel in a real emergency. That is what rewires the pattern. The number that matters is somewhere between 300 and 500 repetitions to build unconscious competence. That is not 300 parking lot stops spread over 3 years. That is 300 aggressive, realistic stops in varied conditions over a few months of focused practice. The riders who survive are the ones who put in the reps before they needed them. The emergency skill 99% of riders do not have is not magic. It is threshold brake modulation under real-world chaos, practiced until it is automatic. If you have never trained this skill, you are gambling that you will never need it. The odds are terrible. Go find an empty road this week and run the drills. Random stops from unexpected cues, surface transitions that force you to modulate mid-stop, approach a corner, and brake before entry without touching a cone. Which part of this scares you the most? The physics, the practice, or realizing you've been riding without this skill for years? Drop a comment and let us talk about it.